People want to remember greatness, and especially in this day that we live in now, you know, people are searching for heroes, and they're here.
So these guys, the stories they have, the passion they tell them with, but you know, it was hard to find one guy who played in that era who was bitter about anything.
By the time you walk away from this experience, I really believe that you walk away cheering the power of the human spirit.
We celebrate the history and spirit of the 100-year anniversary of the Negro Leagues. It's a story that paves the way for America's civil rights. For the next 30 minutes, we'll share some insight about the formation of black baseball teams, from the characters, their lasting legacy in the form of a nationally known museum, and find some hidden history along the way. And we start this journey with a vision in a tiny room in Kansas City 100 years ago this month. February 13th, 2020, dignitaries from around the nation gathered to remember a historic moment in this building, a centennial celebration.
There's something very American about that fighting spirit. And so, as I oftentimes say, while America itself was trying to prevent these athletes from sharing in the joys of her national pastime,
Rube Foster. Historian Phil Dixon said Foster had bigger ideas.
Originally, they were going to meet in Indianapolis, but for some reason, and which is good for us, they changed it to Kansas City. Rube Foster decided he was going to actually, in a way, give up his booking agency because this new league was a moneymaker for everybody. But Rube did say under one condition. He said that I'll have to receive 5% from every team.
It was the birth of the Negro National League at a historic YMCA on Paseo Boulevard, anchored by Foster's vision.
He said, but if I join them and start pitching for them, then you won't be able to beat me. He said, and after a while, they won't need you. He said, and it won't be long before they don't need me. And so his wisdom is that we stay together, and in unity, that's how we can build.
A build that became one of the most popular leagues in America.
there were a lot of somebodies that saw them play. The majority of them just happened to be black. They were filling up ballparks all over the country, but they were trailblazers. They laid the foundation.
Now, 100 years later, with people of different backgrounds, this building represents decades of resilience despite struggle.
They didn't care what color you were. Yeah, they opened their doors to anybody. Here's a league born out of segregation that becomes the driving force for social change in America. Here's a league born out of exclusion that becomes perhaps America's most inclusive entity. And so from that respect, it embodies everything that is great about our country.
Monarchs. Rube Foster Chicago.
They were just a independent team that barnstormed around the Midwest.
Now, Wilkinson was white, but had experience working with a diverse group of people.
He traveled with them, he ate with them, and he would help them cover some of their expenses.
With that in mind, the Kansas City Monarchs were formed with help from the 25th Army Infantry. The franchise went on to have 4 Negro League titles, and 13 players who donned the Monarch uniform are now in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. They barnstormed.
You never knew that the Kansas City Monarchs played in Great Bend, Kansas.
And at home, the Monarchs put on a show.
This was an opportunity to see the best athletes in the country play.
It's because of the players they had, the management they had, and then Kansas City was a very supportive baseball city.
The team was led by the legendary manager Buck O'Neill, and a pitching staff led by Leroy Satchel Page attracted a crowd. Page's daughter Linda remembers all the Monarchs like family.
It's great because I grew up hearing about these guys, and they were like uncles. They came to visit, so to actually see that their legacy will always be remembered, their history, their knowledge, their wisdom, what they overcame, you know, it should never be forgotten, because that's what I take away. Sure, they were great players, but they were great men.
It was a great time for sports in KC, and Page says the Monarchs were heroes, even to this day.
That's what I take away from these men, is that they had such phenomenal stories. They had overcome so much adversity, and they held their head up high, and they were never bitter.
And preserving the legacy at the Negro Leagues Museum's Centennial News Conference, Major League Baseball's Commissioner Rob Manfred and the Players Association announced a $1 million gift. The goal, to further the educational outreach of the museum, complete renovations at the historic Paseo YMCA building that will help the museum with its push into the next 100 years. In addition to the league and its Players Association, the museum is getting support from the new Royals owner, John Sherman, too.
I don't think you can achieve that goal unless you can show young people that people who look like them have been a part of your history. And I think the Negro League Museum does a phenomenal job in that regard.
It's hard to really today fathom that these guys couldn't participate at the highest level despite their talent just because of the color of their skin.
A unique exhibit is on display at the Negro League Museum as well. Powerful paintings and displays of athleticism and determination during a time of segregation. Matt Stewart shows us black baseball in living color.
They lived a long time ago and loved a game that didn't always love them back. Some of their names you know: Jackie Robinson, Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson. But most of them you don't know. But through these paintings, you now can.
These paintings of these players gives them a voice. It brings them back to life in a way.
Greg Kreinler painted a total of 228 black players who played from 1860 to 1960. Over 4 years, he researched them, found their pictures, and painted their likeness on a 5x8 canvas. The transformation from a black and white photo to a color painting turned out to be remarkable.
Actually doing a color painting of them shows people that these ball players were real and they actually existed.
I thought it was a story that needed to be told.
Jay Caldwell commissioned this artwork. He's always been fascinated with the history of Negro Leagues baseball and collects not only art on the subject, but artifacts as well. It was important he find an artist who shared his vision.
There's this whole history that's not very well known about baseball. When baseball was the dominant sport, it was both the worst and the best of America. The worst being that there was segregation. The best being that they went out and did it on their own.
It's not lost on the collector and the artist that they're both white, but they say their mission transcends race. They want to honor these powerful athletes, trailblazers, lost to time.
No doubt that many of them would have been in Major League Baseball if it had been allowed.
You feel for every one of these men and women who played ball and who didn't get the same chances that other players got just because of the color of their skin.
Greg even painted 3 pictures of Kansas City icon Buck O'Neil. This exhibit is at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and runs through the end of May. It's absolutely free. So bring your family out here to look at the pictures of these men who played baseball and broke barriers. Matt Stewart, Fox 4 News.
Still to come, stories of the Monarchs through the eyes of a bat boy and son of a prolific pitcher. Plus, another chance at Cooperstown for the legendary player and manager, Mr. Buck O'Neil. Cool, Papa Bell was so fast, even Jesse Owens refused to race him. Now, most baseball fans know batters feared facing one of the Negro League's most dynamic, flashy, and charismatic pitchers, Satchel Paige. Along with Andy Cooper and Chet Brewer, Hilton Smith was another successful Monarchs pitcher who often took over for Paige for a few innings. His son, DeMars, shares memories from the field with his dad. A Hall of Fame career started out with a tree branch in Giddings, Texas. Hilton Smith was, as his Hall of Fame plaque reads, a quiet yet confident right-hander, best known for relieving Satchel Paige.
He would never complain about anything. He used to go to play. I'm here to play. If you look at his record and it's here, he pitched usually 3 innings. And then my father and other individuals will come in.
His son DeMars Smith recalls his time with his father.
My mother would never quit. You do the things you needed to do. You shine their shoes, you run and get something to drink or whatever, but you watch them. You just listen, and they took care of you.
And manager Buck O'Neil?
One of the pitchers asked for I can get a hot dog before the game. Brought it back to the clubhouse. Buck grabbed the hot dog, threw it in the trash. We don't eat hot dogs before the game. Buck did not play.
Hilton Smith won at least 20 games in each of his 12 seasons with the Monarchs, and when he got the call to the Hall of Fame,
it was tremendous in that we were able to get my father's sister, 93 years old, living in Houston, Texas, had made arrangements to get her to Cooperstown.
Smith also made an impact on one future ball player who would go on to win 8 Gold Gloves.
My last amateur coach was Hilton Smith, who pitched in the Negro Leagues. He's in the Hall of Fame, and he was the one that really inspired me to go and try out for the Royals.
He was responsible for me going to Texas Southern. He's responsible for me having this house.
A house with memories of a Hall of Famer of Monarchs lore. Still to come, new life for classic stories and a trip through Buck O'Neill's America. Buck O'Neill may be baseball's greatest ambassador. He played first base for the Monarchs and became the first African-American coach in the major leagues. Now with more on Buck and his chance at a new honor in the Hall of Fame, here's Fox 4's Jessica Eley.
Take me out to the ball game.
Buck O'Neill broke onto the national scene in 1994 with the Ken Burns PBS documentary, Baseball. It's clear the country was charmed. In 2006, a vote among the nation's baseball writers aimed at putting O'Neill in the Baseball Hall of Fame fell one vote short. In Kansas City, there was a sting.
It's been almost 14 years, and I still get a little angry every time I think about it, and he would not want me to be. And as I tell people all the time, I'm trying my best to be more Buck-like.
Later in 2020, a committee will reconsider adding greats like Buck O'Neill and Minnie Minoso with a special recognition. And those like his dear friend Bob Kendrick and author Joe Posnanski have considered what it would be like.
One, it's right. Everybody knows it. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But two, I think it would be a chance to celebrate him again. For somebody who didn't want or need, to be given this great acclaim, to be given that acclaim, to finally be said, Buck, you belong with the greatest of the greats.
You come off of a 100th-year centennial celebration, and then you move possibly into a Buck O'Neill Hall of Fame celebration, and then perhaps a brand new Buck O'Neill bridge.
What mattered to us about him getting into the Hall of Fame was that he would be there, that he would be there to enjoy it, that he'd be there to, sing to the crowd, and it would have been, one of the most magical moments in the history of the Hall of Fame.
Still, Kendrick points to the grace Buck showed when the votes fell short back in '06.
But the fortitude that he demonstrated that day and the courage that he demonstrated that day to walk out on this very field at second base and accept defeat like a man, to harbor no ill feelings toward anyone who had anything to do with the decision. It was one of the most amazing moments. I think it may have been the greatest demonstration of strength of character that I had ever witnessed.
At the old ball game. Now, we should know in December of this year what the committee decides about the future of Buck O'Neill in the Hall of Fame. The Royals are at spring training now. This summer, all major league teams will honor the Negro Leagues. We'll have details on the celebration in modern-day baseball. And the Negro Leagues knows about perseverance. The latest on the plans to transform the old Paseo YMCA. An amazing team indeed. All right, part of the future of the 18th and Vine District is transforming the old YMCA building at 19th and the Paseo into the Buck O'Neill Education and Research Center. It's that very building where the Negro Leagues formed 100 years ago. Here's Fox 4's Zach Summers.
We're so fond of saying that we started with a hope and a prayer.
Decades before Rube Foster planted seeds for his dream with a meeting at the YMCA near 19th and the Paseo. The 21st century dream was to turn that building into a science where students would learn about the science of baseball. Things like how weather affects the game and why curveball curves.
And so we set out on this journey with a small few who had big belief.
In the summer of 2018, vandals broke into the second floor of the YMCA and broke a water pipe, causing at least $500,000 in damage and a lot of heartache. Intricate hardwood floors completely ruined. As dark as the day was, did not dampen the resolve to make the Buck O'Neil Education and Research Center a reality.
This is very personal for me.
Kansas City, Missouri City Council member Melissa Robinson grew up here and still calls the neighborhood home.
And we have the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and what they've been able to weather in that space. It's still that sustainability of self-efficacy and being able to just move the ball forward. They are a true gem.
There's also the support in Jeff City. State Representative Barbara Washington hopes to secure state funding for an exhibit that could take a piece of the museum around the Show Me State. Back at the Paseo YMCA in this centennial year, the push is on to open the center by the end of 2020. And Robinson says she's ready to represent her community and carry the torch.
Now it's up to us to link arms and make sure that we build for the next 100 years, and that, all hands on deck.
And Major League Baseball will honor its heritage in the Negro Leagues this summer. On Saturday, June 27th, expect to see players, managers, and coaches from all 30 Major League teams wearing a commemorative patch to celebrate the 100 years of the Negro Leagues. The umpires will get in on the things too, and the league will feature 100th anniversary logo on base jewels and lineup cards.
I remember saying to him, Buck, I think I have this idea where I travel around and I'll tell the stories through you. And he said 3 words. He said, don't be late.
Don't be late indeed, how you can get a fresh perspective on a book all about Buck O'Neil's America and the soul of baseball. Award-winning writer and author Joe Posnanski had the good fortune to travel the United States with Buck O'Neil and Bob Kendrick in 2005 as they told the stories of the Negro Leagues across the country. His book is titled The Soul of Baseball, A Road Trip Through Buck O'Neil's America. Originally published in 2007, it hit the audiobook market just a couple of weeks ago. Posnanski says when he heard the voice of Kansas City native David Satzen, he knew it was right.
It doesn't sound like Buck, but it has Buck's spirit in it. And so I said, oh, this is the guy. Why did you even give me anybody else? But that I feel lucky to have somebody read the book like that.
In time, I would grow accustomed to Buck's boundless joy. That joy went with him everywhere. Every day, Buck hugged strangers, invented nicknames, told jokes, and shared stories. He sang out loud and danced happily. He threw baseballs to kids and asked adults to tell him about their parents. And he kept signing autographs long after his hand started to shake.
And that's only one of the fascinating books about the Negro Leagues. We compiled a list of resources at fox4kc.com/Negro Leagues. Thanks for joining us in this celebration of 100 years. Here's to the next 100 years and beyond.
The Negro Leagues should never be forgotten. No, they shouldn't be forgotten. We need to make sure that they are remembered. And I think when Buck built the museum, that was the goal. He wanted them to be remembered. And really, in the final equation, that's what we all want.